right, then let's start. Welcome everyone to this session. My name is Ansar, and I'm a PhD student at the chair of machine learning here at the Humboldt University. And today I'm going to talk about OpinionGPT, which is a project that I've worked with my colleagues for the last about 6 months. It's a project in which we explore the impact of biases on large language models. So first I'm gonna share the motivation behind developing a model like OpinionGPT. After that, I'm gonna show you how OpinionGPT compares with, for example, ChatGPT in terms of what responses it generates. Then I'm gonna share some details about how OpinionGPT was trained. And at the end, I'm gonna discuss the challenges associated with development of OpinionGPT, ethical considerations, and potential applications of it. Without further ado, let's start with motivation behind OpinionGPT. I'm gonna first tell you a now old but quite well-known story in the field of NLP about an automated candidate screening system that Amazon was developing in 2014. Their goal was to create a system that would, in an automated way, rate the potential hires' CVs in order to simplify the hiring process for the HR. But by next year, they scrapped this initiative and removed the system due to unfair bias against women, because they found that female applicant CVs were penalized by the system. Obviously, they did not want to have a system like this. That's why they stopped using it. This short story shows you that biases in AI models or machine learning models have real-world implications, and they have had this impact already 10 years before today, and even before things like ChatGPT became so popular. So, and since LLMs increasingly assist us in our everyday work and life, we want to be sure that AI systems that we develop and use, they are not biased and don't have these unintended consequences like the candidate screening system had. Now, the question is, where did this bias in Amazon's system come from? Since, like any machine learning model, the model was trained on past hiring decisions, and at that time, Amazon had a pretty severe skew towards male employees. Therefore, they had a skew towards male applicants in their training data. And all the model did is it simply reflected the bias of the training data. Now, with that in mind, me and my colleagues, we asked ourselves, what if, to what degree does bias affect the answers generated by large language models that are widely used today by the bias in the training data? And specifically, what if we trained one LLM only on text written by women and another one only on text written by men, for example? And what if we ask both LLMs the same questions? Would the answer differ? If they do differ, how? And that was the inspiration and motivation behind developing, I think, like OpinionGPT. What do results look like? Like the first example that I'm going to share is probably the most illustrative in terms of even if you try to develop systems that are not biased, like ChatGPT, it still has a certain degree of bias. And if we keep that in mind and control for it and train on different types of biases, we see the difference in how the responses are affected. So if we ask ChatGPT and OpinionGPT the same question, give two examples of reputable TV news channels, ChatGPT gives you CNN and BBC. And this is an answer that would be expected in a English-speaking country like the US or the UK, or in general what we would call like Western countries. that are where English is widely used and English media are watched a lot. But on the right hand, OpinionGPT, you can see you can generate responses that would be expected from a person from Germany or Latin America or Middle East. And there you don't get neither BBC nor CNN. You get the media outlets that are relevant for those regions of the world. Now, if you ask a sort of more casual question, what one would do with $1 million, ChatGPT gives you a very thought out and lengthy, it's actually not the full response here because it's very lengthy, on with a good advice on personal finance. That's what you would actually want from an assistant if you want to get an actual solid response. But with OpinionGPT, we're able to show you what would a person from different age demographics respond. So yeah, a teenager would probably want to just spend it all on cool things. Person over 30, I don't know, probably more or less relatable to most people here. An old person, basically whatever makes you happy, just don't be stupid. And if you ask more controversial or like questions that evoke certain emotional response from some people, ChatGPT would just be super neutral and just say, I cannot give you any opinion or preference. Whereas with OpinionGPT, you're able to model what would a person with a liberal worldview or a conservative worldview respond to this question. And even if you try to steer ChatGPT into what would a person with a liberal worldview choose between those candidates, it would still say, I don't know, for example, Joe Biden is a candidate of a Democratic Party, and most likely a liberal person would choose Biden instead of Trump. So now that you see a couple of examples of how OpinionGPT works, how did we exactly achieve this? I don't know if you're that familiar with the world of large language models, but usually whenever they get released by big companies like Meta or OpenAI or Google, they come in a raw sort of format where they contain a lot of world knowledge, but this information cannot be accessed through linguistic commands by default. Like you cannot just ask a model right away. You have to sort of undergo an additional process that's called instruction tuning, where you feed the model instruction response pairs or question and answer pairs, and the model learns this format of how to interact with natural language and give responses to questions. In our case, we required training data in forms of Q&A, instruction response pairs. We did not set out a goal to work with biased completions of tasks. We just simply wanted the model to be able to answer general questions. And ideally, we would have needed at least 10,000 QA pairs for each demographic. And obviously, the responses should have been written by a specific demographic, be it women or men or liberal or conservative. And if you start thinking about where you can get this type of data in an open access format without getting any proprietary data, it's actually not that easy to find these sources of data. The best that we could come up with was to derive training data from Reddit. For those that are not familiar with Reddit, it is an online forum with multiple subforums, which they call subreddits. And each subreddit has a specific topic and certain rules devised by the subforum subreddit itself. If you took as an example the Ask a German subreddit, anybody may ask a question there, and only Germans should answer in the subreddit. Often the threads are posed as a question, and you get many answers that are regulated by upvotes. Upvotes are a signal basically from the community itself which answers are the most relevant, the most accurate, or the most funny, whatever. Like what does the community itself prefer? And yeah, we just simply said that we can use those threads that have a question in them and take the top voted answers for the training of the LLMs so that they're able to answer questions. Now, in a bit more detailed way, we considered only ask a certain group questions subreddits and posts that can contain a question and have at least one upvote. So at least one other member of the community has deemed the question as useful or relevant. And we also took top voter replies that are short because we did not want to have any rants or super lengthy stories. We wanted to keep our answers short and neat. And additionally, we filtered responses by users that are active on other relevant subreddits. So for example, if one user replies both in ask a liberal subreddit and ask conservative subreddit, we would not include the replies by this user because we would not be able to know if the person is actually liberal or conservative. In the end, we collected the data for 11 different groups, biases, across 4, so to say, bias dimensions: geographical, political, gender, and age demographics. Now I just realized that I forgot to mention in the example that old people, they're defined as people who were born before 1980. So that was the rule devised by the subreddit itself. So no offense to people who are born before. I don't think you're that old. But yeah. A couple more details on the model itself. We used 13 billion Llama 2 model as one of the best performing models nowadays. And instead of fully fine-tuning the model or fully fine-tuning 11 different models, we decided to use 11 separate LoRa adapters, one for each bias. Without going into too much detail of what LoRa adapter is, it's basically an auxiliary set of parameters added to the existing base model that you can train and tune, and it works pretty well. It allows us to keep the base model word knowledge intact, so we actually did not change what the model knows already. We just simply add the knowledge about how to respond to questions in a way that is common on a specific subreddit. We are able to train at a fraction of computational costs because in the end you just train a 0.1% of the total amount of parameters instead of 113 billion. And you get what we call bias leakage, as it would have been in case of fully fine-tuning one model on 11 different biases, because if we want to generate responses for all 11 demographics with one group, they all share the same set of parameters, and that way you can get a response from a person from Middle East that you would actually expect from a person from Latin America or the US, something like that. And this way we have a setup where we have a mixture of experts. We can actually switch the adapters in real time whenever we generate them on the website that is available to users. Now, the challenges associated with developing a model like this. Right now, if you interact with the model, some of the model outputs are still not always satisfactory in terms of representation of a model demographic. And the main problem is we attribute a lot of problems mainly to the data, because there are several limitations on Reddit. For example, people that post on Ask a German subreddit are actually not representative of Germans in general. They're mostly representative of a younger age group, and that is savvy on the internet. Also, there is no guarantee that posters or commenters are actually German. So you would never actually know whether a user commenting is indeed German. And there are many different opinions within a subreddit. Even if you get a more or less homogeneous group of people, you still get a variety of opinions and responses. So there is no consistent persona that we can model. and thus you get conflicting responses. For example, one point of feedback we were hearing is that whenever you ask 2 questions on the same topic, you can get 2 varying point of views. So if you ask an American whether he prefers, whether he's for government intervention in the economy, he would say yes. But then if you ask a question about taxes, whether it's good that taxes are used to fund some social welfare systems, he would say no, I don't want government interfering in the economy. If we would want to narrow a biased representation like that, whether it is an American liberal or American conservative, it's not really feasible to do right now because there is no actual filtering on the Ask American subreddit. So we tried to do some things with mixing the training data from liberal bias and American bias, but to no real avail. Now, when it comes to ethical considerations, obviously there are a couple of them, because should mention it right away that OpinionGPT is unfiltered and unaligned. We did not do any safety fine-tuning like it's been a case for ChatGPT or Llama Chat. And our concern is that you could potentially build a chatbot to flood the internet and spread eventual unethical or toxic opinions and comments. And we would obviously avoid that. Well, usually our machine learning group, we open source everything we do. In this case, we took precautions and did not release the weights of the model. We'll make it available only through the web interface. And it can be used only in a scientific context. So no commercial use. And if you want to use it in your research, you require explicit consent from us. You basically communicate with us and we give you access in some way or another to the weights. But when it comes to use cases, what exactly can you do? What kind of research you can do? We build it to mainly explore biases, test our research, and identify challenges in terms of bias research. So one of the potential use cases that we identified is evaluating LLM bias. For example, you would be able to compare outputs of a LLM that is being developed to our model biases, and if there is a strong overlap with a certain type of outputs, you are able to quickly identify that and work towards debiasing the model. And another potential use case is that you can generate synthetic bias data that you can use in your on which you can use your debiasing methods. So in the end, in order to eliminate the bias. So there's this kind of a case that we wanted to make something super biased so that other people can use the super bias generated outputs to steer the other developed models away from this, if they set a goal like this to them. So that's actually mainly it. This was a short overview of what we did. Thanks a lot for the attention. Here is a link via which you can access the model and interact with it. You can also scan the QR code if you want. And if you want to connect at LinkedIn, feel free to do so as well. Yeah.